Carthage had been defeated by Rome in 2 wars, but the former's attack on the Numidian neighbors did not delight the victors. Thus, Rome took action yet again, and following a protracted siege, the city of Carthage was sacked and the Carthaginians were sold into slavery. But what really sparked this storm of bloodshed? Let's go back a little. Carthage had been defeated in both the First Punic War and the Second Punic War, and as a result, it had lost control of Sicily, the Spanish Empire, its fleet, and its independence of military action. The Carthaginians had been forced to pay massive reparations to Rome. Carthage did, however, recover from the Second Punic War in a relatively short amount of time. Coins and trade goods dating back to this time period have been discovered all over the Mediterranean region, including in the Balkans, which is evidence of the city's prosperity due to its reliance on trade. When Hannibal, Carthage's great general and Rome's #1 enemy, fled to the court of Antiochus III, Carthage sent him into exile and declared him an enemy of Rome. This helped Carthage maintain good relations with Rome. They were able to make regular payments on the reparations owed from the Second Punic War, and they even provided military assistance to Rome's campaigns in other parts of the empire. The city became an important source of grain and barley for Rome. However, as the 2nd century BCE progressed, the Carthaginians gradually became more belligerent in their demands for control of their own fate. Carthage harbored deep resentment toward Numidia and its ruler, Massinissa, for the loss of territory that Carthage controlled. The Numidians had been steadily expanding their control over more and more territory until, in the end, they had acquired roughly half of Carthage's territory as it had existed in the year 200 BCE. In the year 150 BCE, in response to an assault on Oroscopa, the Carthaginians dispatched an army consisting of 31,000 men to engage in combat with the Numidian king. Carthage's campaign was a failure, and their army was wiped out. However, Rome now had the perfect excuse to finally crush its old enemy for good, sack Carthage, and take some easy war booty. Marcus Porcius Cato, also known as Cato the Elder, who had witnessed Carthage's resurgence firsthand during a diplomatic visit in the year 153 BCE, was one of the prominent figures who steadfastly demanded in the Roman Senate that Carthage must be destroyed due to the fact that the Carthaginians had waged war without permission from Rome, and to make matters worse, had done so against an ally of Rome. Thus, after the move by Carthage, the start of the Third Punic War was right around the corner. The Carthaginians attempted to explain their actions and grievances against Massinissa by sending envoys to Rome, but their efforts were unsuccessful. For the past 2 or 3 years, a significant number of senators have been advocating for military action against Carthage, and the current situation seemed to be the last straw. Then, a significant turn of events may have been enough to convince the more skeptical senators to change their minds. In the year 149 BC, the Roman Senate pretended to be engaged in diplomatic negotiations by requesting 300 children of noble Carthaginian families as hostages. However, it soon revealed its true intentions by finally declaring war on Carthage for the 3rd time. North Africa received an invasion force consisting of up to 80,000 infantry and 4,000 cavalry from Europe. The Romans initially demanded an unconditional surrender, wherein the Carthaginians were required to hand over all of their weapons, disband their army, and release all prisoners. In addition to this, the Romans ordered the Carthaginians to completely evacuate the city of Carthage and relocate to a location that was not closer than 16 kilometers to the coast. This instruction may have been an indication that Rome intended to destroy Carthage regardless of the outcome of the events that transpired. Carthage, realizing that it had little to nothing left to lose, made the decision to take a stand. Slaves were set free within the city, and a Carthaginian army numbering 30,000 was withdrawn from the territory bordering Numidia. The city and its population of 200,000 got ready for what was going to be a siege that would last for 3 years. The Roman army was commanded by the consuls Marcius Censorinus and Manius Manilius, but the initial battles were a disaster for the Romans, and Carthage was able to withstand the Roman siege of the city thanks to its 34 kilometers of defensive walls. Some of these walls were constructed in the form of a triple defensive line, while other sections were protected by palisades, ditches, and the sea. They were able to withstand every attack that the Romans could muster against them. Most importantly, the Romans were unable to completely blockade the port, so commercial vessels were still able to bring fresh supplies into the city even after they had laid siege to it. On top of that, the Carthaginians launched counterattacks by sending out sorties, some of which included fire ships that set the Roman fleet ablaze. They were successful in destroying some of the Roman siege engines during one of their other raids, and then, during the long hot summer of 148 BC, an epidemic struck the besiegers. In the meantime, the Carthaginian army continued to put up a resolute fight in the countryside. The city of Hippacra did not capitulate in the face of persistent Roman attacks, led by the consul Piso, and even the Numidians, under the leadership of a new king named Bithyas, contributed 800 cavalry to the Carthaginian land army. The Romans had hoped for a speedy and painless surrender, but it was becoming increasingly apparent that the Third Punic War might grow to some epic proportions. In the year 147 BC, when more drastic measures were required, the Romans, who were now commanded by the young and able consul Publius Cornelius Scipio Aemilianus, built a better siege wall around Carthage and its harbor. The wall also included a mole, which allowed the Romans to approach Carthage from the south. This latter structure would prevent access to the only entrance to Carthage's mercantile harbor, which led to the city's large inner naval harbor in a circular configuration. At long last, Carthage was unable to continue receiving supplies via sea. A small Carthaginian fleet attempted to break the blockade on 2 separate occasions by sailing through a newly constructed second exit to the harbor. However, on both occasions, they were unsuccessful and were forced to retreat. Scipio then launched a methodical assault on the walls that were located close to the harbor, while using the mole as a base of operations. He persevered and was ultimately successful in seizing control of the new entrance that had been dug by the Carthaginians. Once again, the city was completely cut off from the rest of the world. The Carthaginian army was unable to provide assistance to Carthage because it was trapped at Nephrus, which is located approximately 25 kilometers south of the city. After a 3-week siege, Scipio felt confident enough to leave Carthage, choking from his stranglehold, and defeat the army at Nephrus. When the Romans launched a full-scale assault on Carthage in the spring of 146 BC, it was the final hammer blow. Once more, the region surrounding the harbor was chosen as the point of entry, and this time, the Romans were successful in breaching the defenses and making slow progress through the city. Only the citadel remained to be captured after 7 days of brutal street fighting and much time-wasting looting by ill-disciplined legionaries. In this location, the Temple of Eshmun served as a stronghold for the Carthaginian commander Hasdrubal and approximately 900 Roman deserters. They should not have expected any mercy, and Hasdrubal's torturing of Roman prisoners on the battlements earlier in the battle, even if it was done to strengthen the Carthaginians' resolve, must now have been regretted by Hasdrubal. So, Hasdrubal surrendered to the Romans as their assault gained ground, but his wife, filled with shame and rage, threw herself and her 2 children onto the massive funeral pyre, and the last remaining soldiers also committed suicide. The fall of Carthage had finally been completed. The entire population was taken captive, and the city was obliterated in its entirety. North Africa was made into a Roman province, and those cities in North Africa that had been loyal to Rome, such as the new capital Utica, were granted the privilege of being tax-free. Carthage, however, would continue to be devoid of inhabitants until Julius Caesar re-established it as a city, and Augustus, a century later, would lend his support to the endeavor. This brings us to the end of this video. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing and sharing so we can keep bringing more content like this. Also, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.